Hi, brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode number 86 in the book of Genesis. We're in chapter 16 today. We finished this beautiful section on Hagar, and we find the Lord telling her, "You're not unseen." And we get this impression of God, of having a God who sees, and it makes a difference in her world. So she sees him, seeing her. She, in a sense, catches God doing something, which is seeing me, and it changes everything for her. So God gives Hagar himself. And in the time that she is given the Lord's presence, the Lord prophesies or gives news about a baby. So it's this context where she calls on the name of the Lord, and the Lord speaks to her and says, she speaks to the Lord and says, "You truly are the God of seeing, and truly I've seen him who's looking after me." So this is in Genesis chapter 16. I'm going to start in verse 7. The angel of the Lord found her, Hagar, by a spring of water in the wilderness, the spring on the way to Shur. And he said, "Hagar, servant of Sarah, where have you come from and where are you going?" She said, "I am fleeing from my mistress Sarah." The angel of the Lord said to her, "Return to your mistress and submit to her." The angel of the Lord said to her, "Surely I will multiply," so now we're talking about babies now, "surely I will multiply your offspring so that they cannot be numbered for multitude." So your offspring, Hagar, not talking to Sarah, this is Hagar, is going to be numbered as a multitude. Abraham gets two multitudes, if you will. And the angel of the Lord said to her, "Behold, you're pregnant, you shall bear," she knows that, "you'll bear a son," she doesn't know that, "you shall call his name Ishmael, and because the Lord has listened to your afflictions." So this is where Hagar calls on the name of the Lord and notes that you're a God of seeing, and I've seen him who's looking after me. My descendants are going to be uncountable. So everything that's said by the Lord is a prophecy here. It's going to be 100% accurate. So you're going to bear a son. So God's in this process. So this person, get this, before they're born, is identified by the Lord, is seen by the Lord, is named by the Lord, and known by the Lord before he was born. So it's similar to John the Baptist, and guess what? It's all similar to you and me. So without God in the equation, Ishmael is just a lump of a tissue, aren't we all? But with God, that is us, that is seeing us, and us seeing God who is seeing us, he is not a clump of tissue. He's the eye and hand and the heart of God is active here. So you shall call his name Ishmael. So the Lord tells this to Hagar, not to Abram, but he ends up being named this. So Hagar's influence with Abram, even though it was his job to name the child, the Lord actually names this child. Then she marks this place with a special name. It's the well of the living one who sees me. So this servant girl / wife, Hagar, who was recently looking with contempt at Sarah, and Sarah's doing the wrong thing too. She's dealing harshly with Hagar. And now apparently Abram hears this woman, the woman who saw God, seeing her, and she must have had an influence, is my point. All right, so this is the interesting verse for today. He shall be a wild donkey of a man. His hand shall be against everyone, and everyone's hand shall be against him, and he shall dwell over against his kinsmen. So we got to talk about this. We got to talk about wild donkeys. So he shall be a wild donkey of a man. And also his hand is going to be against everyone. So he's going to be prone to conflict. But let's talk about the wild donkey part first. So Ishmael, his descendants are going to be like wild donkeys. So if you go to Cumberland Island in Georgia today, one of the things it's known for, and people go there for just this reason, is that's where there's these herds of wild horses, and they're beautiful and they're strong, and if they're not smart, they're at least tenacious to be survivors. Similarly, in their day, that was the wild donkeys. Any donkey that could get out and make its way and survive out there. I mean, you got to sort of tip your hat to these creatures that could survive in this desert environment. So if you could get one and domesticate it, it was a big deal. Why would you do that? Why would you take the responsibility and the commitment and the food to take care of a donkey? Well, the reason is hopefully that there's a big payoff. It's a force multiplier. So why would you own a donkey? Well, because it would be worth it. It would help you be more productive. So in a sense, I think it might be helpful for us to say we have sort of a prejudice against donkeys. We literally call them asses. I think if we understand them a little bit better as wild horses or almost wild horses, horses were not in the area yet for a couple hundred years, and when horses were introduced, they were just the engines for chariots. That's how horses became to the Middle East. Egypt started that. But in the meantime, I think understand wild donkeys as strong, independent, free herds. It's not necessarily insult, which we think it is. So this free and roaming, strong, and this would have been particularly important and meaningful to this person, this handmaiden, this servant, a person with limited liberty, Hagar, particularly after she submitted to God, submitted to Abraham, and submitted to Sarah. That's the good news. The bad news is his hand is going to be against everybody. So even some of his kinsmen, his hand is going to be against. And worse yet, they're going to be against him. So his lifestyle is somehow going to put him into conflict with others who follow maybe social conventions. So the same things that we admire in this people group can also irritate. It can also mean wayward and headstrong and prone to conflict. And perhaps some of the things that were true 4,000 years ago when this was written are the same now. So what we find here is Ishmael. He's the father of the Arabic nations, the Ishmaelites. Josephus, the noted Jewish and Roman scholar and historian from 37 AD to 100 AD, he wrote about Ishmael that he's the founder of the Arabs, the tribe and race, this ethnic group called the Arabs. Later, many of these people came to follow Muhammad approximately 3,000 years from the days that we're talking about. But many of those people are now are Muslims. So we find this character of Arabic strength of numbers, of Arabic strength of character, and highlights noted here that are still true 4,000 years today. So we can appreciate the roots described on this particular day in the scriptures. So 4,000 years later, this helps us understand a people group that God had his eye on, and I believe still has his eye on, the Arabic people, the Ishmaelites, the sons of Abram and Hagar. Thanks for listening.